Hey there, YouTube. For this Think for a Change video, I'm going to be doing something pretty different, which is talking about how I'm going to quit smoking. I have been a smoker for a number of years now, and I have been contemplating for the past few months quitting. But it's a difficult decision, even though, of course, there are health benefits to not smoking. I really love smoking, and in part, it's because of everything that I have associated with it. I started smoking when I was in college because I met some really wonderful people, and we would all just spend the time together, taking breaks from working at our coffee shops, step outside with a cup of coffee or tea and the sunset or the birds singing, and we would sing songs, and we would call our cigarettes celebrations. So it's lovely. There's this ritualistic element that was just nothing but pure appreciation and joy, taking a break to celebrate life and friendship and pauses to, you know, cherish the moment and the sun. So this is in part why I'm sitting outside for this video, because I just had dinner and I want a cigarette. But instead, I'm putting myself in a position outside where I can appreciate the breezes and the birds chirping and the sun coming through the branches of the tree, and talking to you all instead. But so here's the deal. This is why I'm thinking of quitting and how I'm going to do it. And maybe you can see if there's anything you want to do that is in line with this as well. A while back I heard a podcast through Radiolab about people overcoming their challenges when the biggest obstacle in their way is themselves. And it was a really fascinating podcast, and one of the main stories was how this woman who had been smoking for decades finally decided to quit. Her story, along with all the others in the podcast, basically set up this paradigm of an ultimatum, where you give yourself an option that isn't an option. It's not feasible. So you only really have one choice, which is to do what you ultimately want to set out to do. So for instance, her way to quit smoking after decades of heavy smoking was to have her friend promise that she would take out $5,000 from her own, the smoker's savings account, if she picked up another cigarette and donate it to the KKK. That way, any desire or craving that she had to pick up a cigarette and smoke it was outweighed by her repulsion of the idea that her $5,000 would be taken out of her savings and worse, given to the KKK. So that's pretty extreme. There are other extreme cases. It basically boils down to threats, the risk of horrible pain, or something like supporting a group that you really have worked your life trying to work against. I thought it was a fascinating idea of giving yourself an ultimatum by making sure that the present motivation is equally strong as the present craving. That's the idea. To say that you're going to quit smoking because, oh, down the line it'll be healthier, oh, you'll save money, that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, it might be a good decision, but your future self is so weak that it can easily be defeated by the present self, which is that one who craves a cigarette right now. So the idea of setting up an ultimatum with a threatening idea is to make it so repulsive that that present urge against smoking equals the present urge to smoke. Okay, it's a pretty simple concept, but the way I want to use this is, instead of bringing about pain or threats or like ultimatums that are like really actually kind of scary and terrifying myself into not smoking, I want to use some concepts that I've taken from some of my favorite philosophers about disciplining oneself through pleasure. We've been disciplined throughout the course of our lives in numerous ways through pain and punishment. That's timeouts, spankings, shame, the threat of imprisonment, that kind of stuff. We can shape ourselves and our behaviors, and we have in large part because we want to try to avoid pain. But there might be a possibility for disciplining ourselves through pleasure as well, and making something pleasurable, enjoyable, and even the discipline of disciplining ourselves a pleasurable process on its own. So I've blogged about this before, way back when, and I've used it in terms of disciplining myself to do my academic work with writing papers and that kind of stuff. But now I want to couple it with what I heard from this podcast, relate it to a task that I'm setting before myself now to quit smoking, and use the pleasure to have a present pleasurable option outweigh any craving that I might have to smoke. So I haven't quite figured out exactly what that means. I need to have something immediately present that is, as soon as I want to have a cigarette, then I can have something equally pleasurable, if not more pleasurable, that I can go to instead. Instead of feeling guilty and shameful that I have this temptation to smoke, I want to find something that will be a good thing to make this an enjoyable process. And so there have been some ideas, like every time I want to have a cigarette, instead I'll have a cookie, but then I might get fat. And if nothing else, at least what I have decided to do, which is pretty simple, is instead of having a cigarette, when I want to, step outside with a cup of tea, take that 10-minute break, enjoy the breezes and the birds, and do the whole celebratory ritual that I associate with smoking without the cigarette. So far, so good. It's been a number of days now, and I feel okay. And I'm actually kind of excited about this whole option of quitting smoking. So it's an arbitrary reason, but I'm turning 25 in a couple of weeks, and I thought this could be, people seem to think that this would be a good present to myself. I'm not so much sold by that. I just don't want guilt and shame. I'm more for pleasure, and maybe the process of disciplining myself to become a new type of person, one who doesn't smoke, can itself be an enjoyable process too. Who knows? So anyway, I wanted to share this strategy with you. Go ahead and listen to the podcast if you want to. I encourage you to do it because I think it's interesting. You can read what I blogged about of using pleasure as a mode of resistance for oppression, and now I'm using it as a way of self-fashioning as well. Tell me what you think about this idea of using pleasure if you want. You apply it to other challenges that you might have before yourself and see if it works. I'll keep you posted on how this goes for me, but in the meantime, wish me luck.